Okay, o tēnā rā tātou, ko whakawātea e tātou anō I tēnei pō. Ka timata ki te karakia, kia te aki a tātou, hi o tātou wānanga, kātahi ka ruku atu ki ngā mahi o te pō nei. Nō reira, kia hihiri tātou. Ka kāriki pōwhai tere, ko tia te pū waihui konei, ko tia te kauru waihui konei. E ai hoki au ki te mua te tuhi ki hai tai ki ngā pū, ki ngā take, ki ngā wānanga, ki ngā tauira. Patua kuru, patua whao, patua te toki a tai haruru. Peki ake oki au nei ki runga ki te whare hukahuka nui a tangaroa I whatia I enuku tai maroro. Enuku tai maroro pērā hoki rā ko haukohi nei tuahuanga. E kimi ana e hahau ana I te whānau warata. Ko rata I mate mai te awa I piko piko I whiti. Ma te maranga mai nuku e tā tāu warangi. Whāno hara mai te toki o haumi e, hui e, tai ki e. Tēnā tātou. I thought that would help calm my nerves, but still, no. No, it's excitement. And so privileged and feel really grateful to have you all with me tonight. And I hope that it'll be as valuable for you as possible in this space. And I'll give you a quick run through of how it's going to work. And so I've made an 8-week program, which starts next week. And this is like a preview or a tester for that. So we'll go a little bit into some of the modules and I'll give you an overview of what it includes and all of that kind of stuff. And then you can ask questions, put them in the chat and send them to me directly if you want to. And there will be, I know this isn't proper online seminar, webinar etiquette, but there is a cost for that program, but I'll share more of that detail towards the end. Ka pai? And feel free to do the reactions or thumbs up. I can see some of you on the side of my screen. Okay. Starting to come down a little bit, but just want to mihi to you again. Thank you. I know everyone's so busy and for making the time to share tonight with me, I think is pretty special. And so I think we'll start. Ka pai. Okay, so the kaupapa or the program is called Reconnect to Self through whakapapa. Whakapapa being our ancestry, our genealogy, but also the experiences we've had and the environments we've been exposed to. Right, whakapapa is a process. And if we understand that process, we can get a better idea of why we behave the way we behave, why we react or get triggered by certain things, but maybe not others, just why we are the way we are. And with that understanding, we can be like, okay, maybe going into this space isn't safe for me at the moment, or maybe I'm ready, or, we can make more informed decisions that will help us to design the kind of life that we want, our best lives. This is an overview of the 8 weeks or 8 modules. There's kind of 4 parts to it. So the first is setting the foundations and covering whakapapa or the dynamics or the functions of it, how we can apply that type of thinking to our lives. And then unpacking that process. So tracing back some of the mamai or some of the behaviors back to their source to find out where they come from, why they show up in our lives a certain way and maybe not others. And then learning how to release and let go of those, because maybe the way we learned how to manage situations helped us at certain times in our lives, but it's redundant now, or it's not going to help us grow and evolve any further or any more into the people we want to be. And then the last part of the program is focused on thriving and making sure that we're putting things in place to live out and live into our potential. Quickly in the chat, I'd be keen to see if any of these pop out to you at this point in time. So you can either note that down on your pen and paper or add it into our thread. I keep sending those through. And before we get into the mahi for tonight, I want you to write down the following sentences. I deserve a great life. And then number 2, I'm worthy of the things, the relationships, the opportunities and experiences that I want or that I dream about. And as you're writing, so we're going to revisit this later, but I just want you to be aware of what your mind started telling you. So if you're like, I deserve a great life, it's like, ugh, yeah, sure I do. Or it's like, heck yeah, I do. Just become aware of what your inner voice is telling you as you write these 2 things down. Okay, so I deserve a great life. I'm worthy of the things, relationships, or you can put something else in there, the dreams, the goals, the aspirations, and experiences that I want, whether they're for you personally, your whānau, friends, bigger collective. Those are our 2. Ka pai, we good with those? Okay, story time. A quick overview of my journey or my life is that I was very fortunate to grow up immersed in te reo Māori and te ao Māori, born to a Pākehā mum, about 5th generation English, Scottish whakapapa, who married my dad, who's Māori, and has iwi connections all throughout the North Island. And they made a decision to teach their kids, or they wanted their kids to grow up knowing their language, where they came from, and how they fit in the world. And so te reo Māori was my first language, and I grew up in a really pro-Māori environment that communicated to me that I could do anything and everything I wanted to because I was Māori. So there were Māori teachers, nurses, doctors, athletes, business people, good people, bus drivers, cleaners, you name it. Māori were doing anything and everything. So I thought, well, I'm Māori, so I can do any of those things as well. And they created resources, waiata, songs, curriculum even, to just fan that flame. And I assumed that everyone else had the same upbringing as well. And it wasn't until a little bit later on in my life where I met Māori who were embarrassed and ashamed to be Māori. They were discouraged from ticking the Māori box at high school or at university because they were told it wouldn't get them anywhere. You've probably heard, or you've probably even experienced some of this, but that was such a foreign world to me. And I was like, that was probably the biggest culture shock for me, was hearing about those experiences. And I knew then, I didn't know how, but I thought, well, I want to change that. But you probably experienced in one way or another that it's very hard to convince people that something you like is something they should like as well. It's like, being Māori is cool. You can't really tell people that. They'll be like, well, you go be Māori and be cool somewhere else. You have to make people think like it's their idea. And one of my favorite quotes is that we don't empower people directly, but we create an environment where they empower themselves. And so I didn't know at the time, or I didn't even know that quote at the time. But over the last couple of years, I've been trying to do my part to add to that environment where people can empower themselves and kind of, be curious, to seek out knowledge or seek out pūrākau, whakapapa kōrero, and in their own time and own safe space, be like, actually, yeah, this is kind of cool. Not because Hana said so, but this might be something that I want to explore a little bit further. As well as that, I was pretty involved with sport, and especially rugby. And in 2015, I was probably at the time living my best life with what I knew. I had the perfect job. I was getting paid to learn whakapapa, to run maunga, to work with our community here in Rotorua in Te Arawa to improve their health and well-being. I just made the National Development Squad for the New Zealand Sevens and also the wider training squad for the Black Ferns. And surely we all know who the Black Ferns are. And Black Fern Sevens. Black Fern Sevens just won gold at Tokyo last month. And then Black Ferns are like the kind of the female equivalent of the All Blacks, but just do so much better at the World Cup. So we've got a few more than the guys. And so life was pretty good. In 2015, we were working towards the Rio Olympics. And I had it in my mind that I had to play the series of tournaments to try and make the team be selected. And I got injured in one of them. And I tore the ligament from the bone in my shoulder, or the labrum. I tore it right off. And it was excruciating, felt like my arm had been ripped off. I needed surgery for it, but I told myself, no, I've got to keep playing, because I need to get selected. And what happened was I couldn't play as well because I had 1.5 shoulders. So I kind of played my way out of selection because my quality just went like this. And so I ended up getting released, let go from those squads. And I found myself asking the question, like, who am I, or what am I without rugby or without sport? And I had no answer. I was like, oh, there's something wrong there. And the ripple effect from that has started showing up to work, and I started to not care if I did any work that day or not, which I knew wasn't any good, because the kaupapa deserved better, people deserved better that we were working with. And so I ended up resigning. Oh, and then one more thing happened. I was also in charge of the iwi Awards, where we celebrated our Te Arawa success. And it was a good evening. We had entertainment, how people were looking flash in their nice suits and dresses. Everyone looked nice, good kai, and celebrating the excellence across the board, from iwi, marae, hapu, to sports people, to rangatahi, up and coming as well. But being the organizer, I saw everything that went wrong that night. And they were only minor, like someone went the wrong side off the stage, or the MCs didn't do like one thing right. But I saw every little thing that went wrong. And so I thought that night was a failure, which meant that I was a failure. And I let the whole iwi down. Hana 6 years ago had a flair for the dramatic, I think. And then I got injured, I think 3 days after that. So let my people down, let my whole whakapapa line down. And then now I'm not even a rugby player. Well, what am I? There was nothing I could recognize, is probably a better way to say that. Because I know, there's more to us than the things we do. And I knew that conceptually, but I couldn't recognize anything else, because I tied my identity to doing a good job and to being an athlete, or being in these rugby teams. And so began the inward spiral. I don't really want to say downward, because it's got a real negative connotation to it. But I found myself asking that, like, well, who am I without those things? Strip it all away, the superficial, materialistic stuff, like, who is Hana? I was like, well, I don't know, but maybe my tupuna have some answers for me. Maybe whakapapa can lead me in the right direction, because I know that I'm the culmination of everyone and everything who's come before me. And so all of that thousands of years of whakapapa has contributed to me. I said, okay, well, what did they do? And that's our starting point. And I thought, well, they were really intentional with how they named places, how they named their tamariki, their children, and their uri. And I was like, okay, well, my name's Hana. In Māori, it means to shine or to glow. I know in Hawaiian, it means to work. And in Korean and Japanese, it means to flower or to blossom. So I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to try be those three things and live into my name, because that's kind of all I've got at the moment, and find different expression of those. So I'll try be warm and be light in some way, and I'll try my understanding or interpretation of the flowering was like learning and evolving and growing. So okay, well, I'll try research different things, do all of that, and then the work, it's like, well, I'll just put that work into myself, because not knowing who I am without any external thing is that's a problem. It's a big problem. And the turnaround from that has just been incredible, because no one and nothing can take away our whakapapa, even though there have been many attempts to, with different laws, legislations, and other things. It's inherently in you, and we might forget. It might get covered up with other things. We might get distracted, but it's always there, waiting to be remembered and waiting for us to reconnect to it. And so that's another reason for the name of our program, to reconnect to self. Because when you do that, you reconnect to all your tupuna, all your mokopuna, everything that's come before you that's contributed to who you are today. Hi, and this is my nan in the corner over here. And down here is a sport. It's an activity from Tahiti. So every year they have like the Pacific Olympics, but all the activities are based on what their tupuna used to do back in the day. And so Te Arawa, we trace our ancestry back to Tahiti before we arrived here. And so we have been over quite a few times to learn their kōrero. And so one of theirs, when the chief's daughter came of age, anyone who wanted a shot or wanted to be considered to marry her, they had to complete a series of tasks. And one of them was to lift a kohatu so many times over their shoulder, drop it, pick it up, drop it again. And another activity was to prepare their waka to sail here to Aotearoa. And I think they had to find something and take it back to Tahiti or to that island. And their kōrero, or one of their kōrero, is that Māori are the descendants of the warriors who left Tahiti, came here, and decided for whatever reason they didn't want to go back. And so Aotea is an old school word for aito or warrior, and then roa, far away. So that's another interpretation of why the place we live in, where we are right now, is Aotearoa. And you get all of that whakapapa kōrero with just the activity of lifting a rock from the ground to your shoulder. You can't really get that in the gym with a barbell. You've got no connection to it. You're in a concrete warehouse or wherever you might be working out. Similar movement. But when we engage in our own practices and our own activities and what our tupuna used to do, there's potential to tap into that wealth of knowledge. And that's like a 2-second lift. 3 seconds sometimes. But you've got that big drop down, and then from that we could go, our greatest form of a mother, Papa Tuanuku, is a big rock. The main landmark we use to identify where we are or where we whakapapa to is our mauna. And then what do we usually gift to each other or to someone, whether it be for ceremony or any kind of gift? It's a stone. Like, it might not always be pounamu or onewa or kind of indigenous stuff that we whakapapa to. Diamonds are kohatu too, or sapphire, or the list goes on. But we have such a big connection to these things, and reconnecting to that unlocks so much opportunity for us in so many different ways and applications. How are we going? Is that making sense? Do you want me to go into a little bit more? Are we good? I feel like I'm asthmatic because I'm so excited to share this stuff, but okay, remembering to breathe. All right, so we're going to go into one of the modules now, which is about whakapapa, or about process. And so for those of you who this one stood out for, this I think is a really great analogy for it, or great visual to pair with that whakaaro. And so this is an awa, and there's quite a few others down south in Waitaha, Te Ngutu Awa o Rākaia. And just see here, there are many different streams that contribute or that make up the larger awa. And so I want you to think about your life as an awa, as a river, and write it down, or you can just meditate on it for a little while. Do you like how the awa of your life is flowing at the moment? And think about the different streams that could be feeding into it. So it could be relationships, it could be mahi, could be COVID, could be lockdown. You know, just take your time with this one. We're going to spend a little bit of time here. Do you like how it's flowing at the moment? If yes, cool. What's contributing to that? What's feeding into that? If you don't, try to become aware of that as well. Or an easier way to focus your whakaaro is to write down 3 limiting beliefs of why the flow or the awa is flowing the way that it is. And if you have any questions, add it into our chat, or you can send them directly to me. A limiting belief could be, if we go back to our 2 sentences from earlier, I deserve a great life. If you were like, oh, no, I don't, that's a limiting belief. Like, okay, so there's something feeding into the awa that's saying, nah, you don't deserve good things to happen, or even great things to happen. You can write down more or less if you want, it's up to you, but just something to bring your attention to. And even one of mine from the kōrero I shared about what happened with my rugby injury could be like, my limiting belief was I was only worthy if I did those things. I was only worthy if I was in high performance sport, or I was only worthy if I had a job or a role that was making me money. Those could be limiting beliefs. Kapai. Spend maybe another minute to give you some time to think about that one, and then we'll continue. Yeah, again, this is just an overview. This video will be back up in the next couple of days as well. I might edit out all my nervous things, but it'll be back up and you can revisit it as well at any time. The third bit of mahi we'll get into is the 5th module. So one of my favorites, they're all my favorites, but unbecoming. The analogy that we've got for today is whakairo, or our carving. And so this is a whakahua that I took of one of my whare meeting houses here in Rotorua. If anyone can guess, put it in the chat. But no, this is Wahia at Te Whakarewarewa, the thermal village. If anyone from Waka is here, let me know, share some love. But I like this analogy because the rākau, or the wood, didn't start off like that. While it was growing in the forest, the carvers, or tohunga whakairo, who I've heard kōrero from, would go into the forest, and when they look at a tree, they see what's within it. They see the panel for the whare, they see the taiaha or the taonga they're going to carve from it. They see that already as it's growing, and even some rākau were grown for specific purposes. And so it's already there, and it's their job to just bring it out and bring it to the surface into these designs that we see. Kapai. And so carving that space out gives it its function, gives it its purpose as well for us to use, or for us to engage with it. And so we have 3 questions here in this part. How do you perceive your mistakes, failures, flaws, wrong decisions? What have you overcome and unbecome, or let go of, to achieve your dreams, or for your awa to flow to how it is now, to a space that you like. And if your story were whakairo, what do you think it would say about you? Hey, coming in heavy on a Wednesday night. All with love. You can write these down, you can think about it. It's up to you, you can add it into the chat. How do you perceive your mistakes, failures, flaws, and wrong decisions, right? There's such a negative connotation to them. And you have to put a lot of work in to redefine what that means to you personally. And even like if I had never got injured and I don't know if I would have made the team, or I don't know what would have happened, but I probably wouldn't have turned to whakapapa, and I wouldn't really understand or consider the value that it has to help us be self-determining and to live the life of our dreams. I would have still been tied to that superficial identity of what I did rather than who I am. And so getting injured, as painful as it was at the time, is one of my favorite failures, because without it, I wouldn't be on the path that I'm on now. And like I grew up with pūrākau for breakfast, lunch and dinner. Like I grew up on Maui stories and Te Rātua is the natural environment. I knew all that stuff theoretically, and I thought it was awesome. But it was like, there's just like passive bits of information. Like, oh, this is what our tupuna, our ancestors believed in. This was 200 years ago, pre-colonization. Like it's just this passive, dormant kind of thing or artifact that we can look at and reference. But that's kind of about it. But with the resurgence and revitalization efforts across the board for Māori and Indigenous people, there's this wave of actually engaging with our kōrero as this living thing that we get to feed into and bring to life in different ways. And that never would have happened had I not got injured, I don't think. And even now, like I'm still averse sometimes to failure, but I know that it's a normal part of process now. When things don't go to plan, just like, okay, maybe there's something else I need to work on, or it's not as dramatic as it was back then. And number 2, what have you overcome or unbecome and let go of to achieve your dreams? So these could be thought patterns, right? The limiting beliefs. It could be unbecoming a version that you put on for other people because it's what was acceptable. Especially as children, we start to learn if we behave a certain way that we'll get rewarded for it, or that people like that, we'll get celebrated for it. And if we behave another type of way, we might get punished, or there'll be more severe consequences, or it alienates us from other people. And so for me, I've always thought like this ever since I was little. But I remember at school and even with my some of my whānau, I'd ask them questions and then they'd just kind of get awkward. They don't want to have those conversations. As a child, you learn, I say, okay, people don't want to hang out with me if I talk about this stuff. Okay, but they do want to be my friend, or they treat me really nicely if I have good grades, if I make the sports teams. And so as awesome as my upbringing was, there were all these little things along the way, those little streams that fed into the awa of my life that led me to believe that my worth was tied to being an athlete. And so when I got injured, nothing. So I had to unbecome those beliefs in order to kind of grow and start again and build something stronger in its place. And then our last one, if your story, your awa of your life were a whakairo, what would it say about you? And I think, I don't know about you, but at different times in my life, I've found that I didn't know I could recarve the whakairo that I'd set. I was just like, oh, well, this is my life. It is what it is. But actually, in looking to tupuna mātauranga and unpacking the whakapapa or the why in the process of why my life is the way it is, you get to unravel those strands and reshape the course of that awa as well. So these are just beautiful, beautiful. Oh, a lot of work tonight. I was working on this earlier today too. I didn't realize how many there were. But this is the 8th module. So last part of the course, which is around vision. And I want you to write down your vision, your goal, your dream, or your ideal life or situation. Make it as big or as small as you want. It could be the whole picture or just a part of it, but do it in as much detail as possible. What does it feel like internally? Now, how does it make you feel? What does it look like? What does it smell like? Are you by the beach? Are you in the ngahere? Are you a chef? Do you own your own restaurant? Who's there with you? Where are you? And what I've found works for me, and this is replicated in karakia, in waiata, and pūrākau as well, is that once you identify what it is you're working towards, and it's locked in your mind and you can see it, you can feel it, you can smell it, you know, you're familiar with it, you can start working on the habits or those streams that flow towards that destination. So unbecoming limiting beliefs, letting those go. Maybe there are toxic relationships or redundant ones that are draining a lot of your energy. Maybe there's some unresolved mamai that's keeping you from taking the next step. But what our tupuna used to do when they would voyage and just crisscross in between the islands is that they had to see where they were sailing before they left shore. Because the way they operated, I don't know if that's the right word, but the way they navigated the moana was, it was like the waka was staying in the same place and they were pulling the island or wherever their destination was, they were pulling that closer to them. So a little bit different in the sense of going from A to B. A stays where it is, and then everything else moves around it. And so we have to see that vision or see the next step even in our minds so that we can attract it towards us or pull it towards us. You have to see that destination, see the island, see the vision, the dream in your mind so that you can get to work on the things in order to pull it closer to you or so that you live into it. Ka pai? Any pātai? Oh, okay, this is a good pātai. Oh yes, very similar to the law of attraction. And the awesome thing, like even if you're not Māori, like everyone's Indigenous somewhere, we all have stories, we all have an abundance of kōrero. We've been able to preserve some of that, in bits and pieces. And what we have is kind of holding on to it for dear life. But you've got karakia, like the karakia that I started off with is about cultivating new thoughts and new ways of thinking. And so our tupuna were very intentional, not just in naming their tamariki, but with everything they did. Everything had a purpose, everything had its function. And so reciting that kind of karakia reaffirms it to themselves, for whatever activity they were partaking in. If you're lost and have no clear vision, is there a way to connect to it and find it? Yeah, for sure. And sometimes we can be overwhelmed, like it has to be this great big thing. Like at one point in time in my life, my goal and my vision was to just be Hana. Like that's still it now, but it just has to make sense to you. And very easy now with social media and like the comparing game to seeing what other people are doing or not doing and comparing to what we're doing or not doing. Very easy to think that it's this grand thing, when in actual fact it could be like almost 2 months ago, mine was just to walk like down to the driveway and back, because I hadn't done any kind of physical activity for a long time. And now I've been walking every day for almost 8 weeks, week 8 tomorrow. And it's nothing like what I'm used to. Like in the squad for the national rugby team, used to running the block. And sometimes I have those thoughts in my head, like, oh, you should be running this. Come on, girl. Like, no, that's not, like, that was the purpose once upon a time. Now we're just moving because we've got different goals. And so, okay, and another part, limiting things make it hard to envision an ideal life. Does that mean I have to figure out how to get past those limiting things first? I think it's a bit of a balance, like if you have the two strands together, but it is very difficult to see the light or to see any kind of different future for ourselves if we're just trying to survive. You know, how can you dream when you're trying to show up for mahi or get paid, provide for yourself, keep the lights on, be warm? Like, so difficult. And there's so many other scenarios as well. And one of the, I cannot emphasize enough how incredibly valuable our kōrero is, or pūrākau are. And the one that comes to mind is about the separation of rangi and papa. And so rangi nui, sky father, and papa tuanuku, earth mother, physical realm, were together, and their children, 140 of them, 70 tāne wahine atua, or rei, cramped in between them. And that was all they knew. For some atua, it was fine. They're just doing their thing. They were formless, so they could easily maneuver around the space that they had. But that's all they knew until one day Uepoto got washed out, and he saw the expanse of space beyond their parents. And then he reported back and took some of his siblings to show them too. And then all of a sudden, like the seed was planted, or maybe the balloon popped. What's another analogy? The light came on, something like that. All of a sudden, there could be something different. All of a sudden, you know, the seed was planted, and they started to think, well, what is it like out there? Could we survive, knowing that it could be different? That you could choose differently, like to wake up 5 minutes earlier, like just starting with something really, really small. Yeah, knowing that it could be different allows that seed to grow. And even if we don't take action on it, it's still growing there in the background, in the subconscious as well, until it gets too big that we can't ignore it. And so I'd been working up to doing my big as 200-meter walk for a long time. But I was, oh, no, I'll just do it tomorrow. No, I'll just do it the next day, until it just got to that point where I couldn't ignore it. Yeah, if you can imagine it, you can create it. And back to that same whakaaro, that it just has to make sense for you. Doesn't have to make sense to anyone else. I get friends telling me like, oh, what time did you get for your run? It's like, no, I just walked it. It was like 40 minutes. And I'm good with that. But just because of that's what I used to do. Kapai. And so pretty much that's the quick overview, or that's our training for tonight, e te iwi. I'm just going to check. Yeah, there is another slide. And this is just going to be more information about the program that starts next week. But hopefully you were able to take something away from that. Another seed's being planted to make these or similar types of wānanga, maybe just focusing on one pūrākau rather than trying to skim across heaps, making that a more regular thing. But so hopefully there's something of value for you tonight. And feel free to send me any messages as well. If you're connected on Facebook, or you can email me, hana@hanatapiata.com. I'm kind of everywhere because I love, hopefully you could tell how much I enjoy and love this type of wānanga. Ka pai. And so I'll just run through a few more things about the program, and then I see Tash, I see you, and we'll come to you after this. Ka pai. And so Reconnect to Self is just more in depth on each of those modules that we covered tonight. So next week for 8 weeks, live sessions, kind of like this tonight, but more interactive as well. So there'll be breakout rooms, time to ask questions, dig a little bit deeper into things, and share whakaaro and perspective as well. And you'll have access to the content, and there'll be online support, so between us, for the next 12 months. But Christina, who's in the call tonight, might be able to tell you that that's ongoing kind of all the time anyway. We finished over a month ago, or over a year ago, sorry. There's a community Facebook group, which helps with accountability as well, we've found. There's other bonuses throughout those 8 weeks, and other content that goes onto a membership site that isn't shared on the social media sites. The link, if you want to check that out, into our chat, and then otherwise we'll address some of the part-time. So the sessions will be Tuesday nights. So Tuesday the 14th will be the very first one. And if there was anything also that you didn't like or thought I could do better, like maybe calming myself down before I started the live session, please let me know, because it's good for my growth too. I don't know if any of you have my books, but I dedicated like the last 2 pages to like give me feedback, because that makes me work on my storytelling skills, and all of that is helpful for my journey. I might have a new favorite failure to share. And the sessions go for about an hour, hour and a half. Like the half an hour at the end is usually kind of like a gossip or just further debrief. But we cover the program or module content within the hour, and then we hang out for a little bit afterwards as well to go a little bit deeper into some of the kaupapa. And yeah, they'll all be via Zoom. And yeah, do need to register. The last day is the day before, so the 13th of September, so that I can send out the information in the kind of pack to make sure that we're ready to go on the Tuesday. And there is a cost. I've been trying to avoid these questions in the chat because I don't like talking about. There is a cost, and if you click on the link, you can go and see that. I don't know, I'm still trying to work on that one. But yes, our session tonight will be, I'll work on it over the next couple of days to just make sure it's concise, and it'll be shared. I'll share the link on the Facebook page into the event. If that's how you connected tonight, I'll be blasting it everywhere. If you subscribe to the newsletter, I'll be in on that as well. I don't know if you can see, but I feel like I'm really red. Maybe it's the lighting. No, but thank you so much again. Very interesting times that we live in with what's happening in the world, and so for you to make time tonight, really hope that you found something you could add to your awa in a good way. So okay, the program, the 8-week live session, like one every week for the next 8 weeks, is $795 with all those inclusions. But I've made another kind of site where you can go through it at your own pace. I think it's like $179, and you can access that forever. The main difference is that we won't be spending the time, or we won't be going through the content together. You'll just be going through it by yourself, but there'll be online support as well. We've ripped that one off. Okay, and I think maybe before too many of us leave for tonight, I'll probably wrap us up with a karakia, and then maybe another 5 minutes or so if you have any further questions, and then that'll be us for tonight. Ka pai, no reira, kia hihiri tātou, This karakia is one of my favorites, and it's what Hou mai tawhiti said to his people, Ngāti Oho Mairangi, now known as Te Arawa, before they left Hawaii to come here. And he pretty much set out the expectation of how they should conduct themselves upon arrival. Yeah, this is a good reminder to me for the standard that my tupuna had and how I can embody that today. And so I'll leave us with that tonight. Kia hihiri tātai. Tutua mai te whiwhia mai te rawe atu rau pare a tangaroa i te ororo i te oro mei tuki ai koe I tātai ai koe. O I kiri o tangaroa o I tere te waka nei te reanga ia, o I tūtaki tēnei mānuka tūtaki tēnei ngā hoa. Tupu te mahara, tupu ki roto kia hono koe ko te hono tawhito. Pure au taringa kia turia kia hoi, ko I whakarongo koe ki te kōrero iti, ko te kōrero iti ka tahurina ko te hauaitu. Ki hai te kanohi I titiro ko te taringa te whakaaronga. E tama, e hei, he oro e māka I tia e. Nau mai haere taiki uta ki taiki mau koutou ki taiki noho, he huhu, he pōpō, he hane, he mate ai tū ka he. He rangi, me mau ki taiki tū, he puia, he angina, he kōtuku, mate kāra, ka tika te mate, whāno, hara mai te toki, o haumie, hui e, tae ki e.